gentlemen. This is something we've been looking forward to for several months now. I'm Brad Johnson, class of 1971, member of Top Half Epsilon. And we're here today to kind of have just an informal discussion about special events that occurred here in Wabash College 50 years ago, and it had to do with the coming back to Wabash College and Top Half Epsilon fraternity. Special set of circumstances at that time. And, we've got three members who were part of the fraternity in that era who are going to just sort of reminisce and wax on somewhat about those special times. And the reason I say special times is because I was doing a little bit of reading and research into this, and it was a pretty turbulent time on campus, particularly on issues of segregation and integration. Fraternities here, with perhaps one or two historical exceptions, were essentially segregated institutions, not necessarily by choice, as much by history. There was a set of students, though, on the campus that thought that that was something that needed to be changed, and needed to be changed soon. And as a result, in the late winter and early spring of 1962, these individuals who, some were in fraternities, some were independents, in Martindale, organized and decided that they would bring to the campus an integrated fraternity. So I'm going to introduce our panel here, and I'm going to start on my far left, David Johnson's class of 1963. David was one of the founding members of the rechartering group. You'll find his name among that. David served as the first vice president of the chapter, as I recall. Following graduation, he received a master's degree from Purdue University, and then went on to have a 30-year career in IBM Corporation and in management in Chicago, Boca Raton, Florida, and Columbus, Ohio. And he's now retired with his wife Jackie in Boca Raton. David On, class of 1965. I was told that you graduated in 3 years, but I think maybe that almost 3 years, right?
Well, no, but what was 3 years? I'm sorry.
That you graduated, that you got your
No. Took me 4.
No, today was a junior 5 years.
Well, the biography you sent me said that you were grubbing for your grades. Grubbing actually Phi Beta Kappa as a junior. So.
I didn't decide I could leave yet.
From Wabash, David went on to Yale University, got his PhD, and then spent quite a few years as a professor at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine, from which you just retired 4 years ago. So, he's been a highly published author and has lectured close to 50 times around both the United States and the entire world on topics relating to his profession. He's also got a long Wabash history, long Wabash legacy. His father was a graduate and has 2 younger brothers who are graduates of Wabash as well. And to my immediate left is my good friend Ken Schild, class of 1966. Ken was in that first pledge class, I believe, of the rechartered Alpha chapter. Ken served as both the president, treasurer, and secretary of the chapter while he was an undergrad. He too is Phi Beta Kappa, summa cum laude from Wabash, went on to Harvard Law School, practiced in a very prominent Los Angeles law firm for close to 25 years. And from there, he became general counsel, executive vice president for Aurora National Life. And most importantly, congratulations, you're retired.
Retired the end of last month.
And ain't it great?
Yes. Though my wife has too many plans for me.
So I think I want to start this out maybe by just asking each of you to point to any salient fact that you think about those particular days that are still crystal clear to you as we talk about it here 50 years later. David, why don't we start with you?
first I'd like to thank all of you for coming to listen to us talk about our memories. They may not be as important to you as they are to us. And I want to say that what we did, I think any one of you could have done and would have done. And it's just that we had the opportunity to do it. And, you know, it started for us in 1962. Roger Alley, you're going to hear from him tomorrow night. John Dooley and I were living on the 4th floor of Martindale. And one day, Bob Hamilton came to visit us. And there were no integrated fraternities on the Wabash campus at that time. And Bob asked us to join him to form an integrated fraternity. And it didn't take us very long to agree that that was the right thing to do. The way I recall it, Bob had done a lot of the research, and he knew that the TKE chapter was here in the 30s, and that had then folded, and he knew that the TKEs had no policies against membership, and the TKE headquarters was in Indianapolis. So Tau Kappa Epsilon was the choice, and we really didn't consider any other fraternity. We went with Tau Kappa Epsilon. And Bruce Melcher was the executive director of the national organization in Indianapolis. And he advised us on how we should form a chapter and what we had to do to reactivate the charter. And we had to get a certain number of members before they would allow us to reactivate the charter. So our mission was to go out and recruit men for the chapter. And we were lucky to get a lot of good men.
Just down the hall. In the road.
Dave, Earl McGimsey was an early member.
Al Dooley.
Al Dooley. I'll leave out the pledge class because I know Ken wants to talk about that.
Jess Cooley.
Jess Cooley.
Yes, let's go.
Jess Lipscomb. So there were a lot of good men that we recruited. Well, Dave, you were living in Martindale too, weren't you?
Yeah, right. Well, I remember, actually, there was a war between our rooms at one time. We would have spent how many years, and then you tied our door shut, and, you know, just minor little things like that. But you can't hold it against the upperclassmen, or you'll pay. When I came to Wabash, I came, decided, I wanted to be an independent. I found out later that I actually had a political philosophy. I didn't seem to fit in any slot. But one day I accidentally read an article in Playboy. It was written by Carl Hess, who was a speechwriter for Goldwater. And he labeled me. I turned out I was a libertarian. Well, that partly explains why I wanted to be an independent. I didn't like the idea of turning over my life to, particularly as a pledge and so forth. And, but when Dave and Tom and others approached me, I thought, now this is worthwhile for a problem that's here. And at that time, the turmoil was not just the Wabash campus, it was everywhere. And there were universities that were closing fraternities because of this, or forcing things. Now, to me, that was bad. You know, I say, a liberal, there's a problem, wants to pass some laws to make you do what's right. If you're a libertarian, you just look to see what's right and you do it. And so I thought, oh, here's a way. I can become a member of this. We can at least offer one fraternity choice. You could always be an independent if you were from one of the discriminated groups, but you had one other choice too. Now, I tell this story about the power of doing something in this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Tom Goldstein had pledged in that thing, and he was an excellent wrestler. And in fact, as a freshman, he had won a little state. Big deal. He was, at the time, most of the wrestlers were delts. They didn't pay attention to him. But once he pledged, it was okay if it's in independent. But they didn't have any Jews. I don't know whether that was nationwide. Problem with the national fraternities was you had to be acceptable to every member. That meant somebody in Georgia could blackball you. Okay. So, like Kappa Sig, they fought with the national, and someone to do this, someone to do that. Well, the delts, they just couldn't stand the idea that an outstanding wrestler was going to be in another fraternity. So they talked him into de-pledging teams, and they pledged him. and I don't know if anything ever came of it or not. I mean, Goldstein doesn't necessarily mean you're Jewish. But I kind of felt that our approach created that area of competition which actually brought change. And I always was proud of that fact, that by doing something active to solve a problem, we kind of encouraged others to do the same.
Ken was in the first pledge class. Of course, we started with what, 20,
33.
33? Did that include
That was-
pledges?
That was before pledge.
Before pledges, okay, we had 33, so he got the charter. And then, of course, our challenge is to get a good pledge class. Because, of course, new blood is a secret. And so, Ken?
Well, I'm thinking, that was it. Well, Teak ended up with a great pledge class. I have.
Why?
Now,
Because I was pledge
some of
trainer.
it, some
I
of it
remember.
Some of it was happenstance. I know when I came to Wabash, I had my heart set on joining another fraternity because they had a nice house. On the outskirts of campus.
Compared to ours.
Yes, but for whatever reason, they had the bad judgment to not want me. And I don't know if it still exists in today, but in those days, Lola Hildebrand was the admissions director, and I guess there was this system where, kids that weren't going to be pledged would be put in touch with fraternities that were interested, and of course the Teaks were interested. And I rapidly realized that was where I belonged. But the circumstances were quite different. I mean, with one little house on Crawford Street that I think had like 12 guys in it, and then we had our annex at Granton Pike, which I think we had like 20 odd people in there. I understand a Wabash professor now owns it, and I hope in the intervening 50 years the insulation has been. I told this story at the dedication of the fraternity house, how my roommate was John Mader, who still holds one of our track records. I think they don't run the 220 anymore, but he ran the 100 in 10 seconds in the 220 and in 22 in the 440 and 48.5, and he was anchored on our relay team as a freshman. But so John didn't have an ounce of fat on his body, and of course, now I was skinny then as well. It's hard for folks to believe that.
He was.
But there were no storm windows on the house, so we'd put newspapers around the edges of the windows, and but the wind would still blow through. I mean, John would put I think he had a popcorn maker, and you'd turn it on without the popcorn and put it under his desk to keep his feet warm. So our housing circumstances were not the greatest, but there was a lot of good fellowship, and it was a great class. I mean, Jim Ackle wanted to get get his PhD and was head of the psychology department at Western Illinois. Frank Starkey, an African-American, got his PhD from Brown, and I think he worked for GE for decades.
He
besides.
taught at Illinois Wesleyan.
Also taught at
for a number of
Illinois
years.
Wesleyan
Right.
as well.
Right.
Rich Coughlin, who pledged the second semester, was and we didn't have that many athletes in our fraternities, but the ones we had were very good. Rich was one of the last three-letter men at Wabash, track, cross country, and wrestling. And I think left to his own devices, he would have weighed 140 pounds, and I think the wrestling coach chartered him, and at least I regarded it as that. I think he wrestled, I don't know, Jerry, you may remember, I think it was 117 or 118 pounds, or some sub 120 pound weight. I have no idea how he ever made his weight. And John Farger, who's a successful physician, who I think will be here tomorrow, and I'm leaving out quite a Mike Stein, who's very gifted artistically, and we won the Penn Helmut